Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. Today we are drawing Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid, which means this is not going to be easy because this is a complex design. But yeah, well, I don't know, the pose isn't particularly difficult, but I've got to draw, obviously, the design, I've got to draw a gun, and I've got to deal with the flowing bandana, which may cause some problems. But I'm probably going to talk a little bit about stylistic adaptation because this is a character whose design necessarily doesn't always translate super well to, well, there's parts of it which can be difficult to translate to certain art styles. But that's the thing I'll talk about more whenever we actually get into this. But yeah, largely the pose isn't too difficult, but who knows? It might take a while. But we're doing a kind of basic enough profile shot, even though it's a full body, not full body, but it's a mid shot that is a profile. We're not doing like the single long frame profiles that I do sometimes as well, like the Spawn one or the Mr. Sinister one. We're not doing something like that. This is still a mid shot, but you'll see whenever we get into it. But yeah, with all that said, we'll roll the intro and then we will begin. But yeah. Okay, so as I said, this is a profile shot, meaning we're dealing with a side profile. Such as this. This is a flat side profile, which is, I don't think I've not shown a side profile in a while anyways. I have done them before, but I haven't shown one in quite a while. But yeah, this is a side profile. Which is of course meaning to say that we're seeing a perfect profile shot from the side, 50% of the face. That is a side profile. And yeah, so as I say, this is a simple enough pose of where it's just him holding the gun to the side. That's it. That's all there is to it. But obviously the design is one thing, and then there's obviously, as I said before, stylistic adaptation. So what I mean to say whenever I say that is that Snake is a somewhat cartoony looking character. Not necessarily in game, so to speak, but for example, with the way that the bandana sits, you can never actually see his eyebrows. So you need to give the impression of this kind of grimace through the bandana, which obviously isn't necessarily how anything like that would actually sit. It would be quite hard to get something like that, like a fabric, to sit on your face in such a way where you can see the kind of harsh lines of the brow poking through. This is not really how that works. So you have to kind of this is just kind of how it looks though. So you just kind of bite the bullet and do it. But yeah. So realistically speaking, beyond that, not too difficult. I've gone for Snake's Metal Gear Solid 2 design mostly, but I've done the kind of Smash Brothers thing of where I've kind of done up the facial hair a little bit more. I've thickened it up a little bit because in Metal Gear Solid 2 he's only got kind of like heavy stubble around the edges of his jaw, so he's not got much going on, but I've thickened it up a little bit like they do in Smash Brothers. I've also made his hair a little longer than it is in Metal Gear Solid 2. See, in Metal Gear Solid 2 Snake has quite a long neck, and his hair goes down to the end of his neck. So it doesn't look odd there that his hair is quite long. But here I've kind of shortened his neck a little bit. So because of that, his hair looks a lot longer than it actually is because it sits on his shoulder. Yeah, it's sitting against his shoulder here. But I suppose I've given him more of the kind of Kurt Russell Snake Plissken hair here a little bit, I suppose. He has a kind of much longer hair. But yeah. So even though this is the Metal Gear Solid 2 design, I've given him the SOCOM pistol. I've shortened the suppressor a little bit because the suppressor should be quite long on that pistol. But again, as I say, I've shortened it a bit just for the sake of space. I mean, it's already abutting the edge of the frame here, and I didn't want it going over the edge of the frame, so I just said screw it, and I just kept it short. Because yeah, this is quite a large. It's normally quite a large gun. And I'm not sure that the SOCOM is in Metal Gear Solid 2. I don't remember. I haven't played it in a very long time. So I don't necessarily remember whether or not it was in it or not. There is a similar gun in there, if it isn't specifically that one. But yeah. So yeah, I've also got the flying bandana to do. So that's not super difficult, but it's another thing I have to do. I'm trying to think, is there any other big things which I need to go over before we start? Because I'm already nearly 6 minutes of rambling in. But yeah, I mean, stylistic adaptation, I already kind of said the thing that needed to be said there, which is that Metal Gear Solid, despite having a more realistic look, does still have a degree of stylization to it. And a lot of this obviously comes in Yoji Shinkawa's art, as it's then translated to game. Which in a lot of times can give the characters a lot of these kind of very odd looks. And again, as I say, with the kind of way that the bandana sits on Snake's face, is not how that would ever work. Because you would never be able to see like the firm brow line poking through it. It would sit kind of hovering a little bit off the face. It wouldn't be so tightened at the. I don't think you would ever actually be able to tighten it enough where you'd be able to see the brow lines through it, unless it was a very thin material. But it doesn't necessarily appear to be. So who knows? But yeah, I don't know if there's necessarily any more I need to say on that. I think we're probably good to start, more or less. Let me just quickly go over a few things. There's a few little adjustments which I'll need to make, such as these pouches here, they need to be a little bigger. The perspective here isn't strong enough where they should be that small. So I will need to make those bigger. I might do something about this eye. I think it should maybe be a bit more narrow. I think his eyes may be a little too open. Yeah, I might narrow that eye a little bit more. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what I do. Because yeah, a lot of this stuff is just stuff which I kind of figure out as I'm going. With a lot of these little kind of details and stuff like that, they tend to be things which I just kind of toy around with as I'm going, and then eventually I kind of come to something which is moderately okay, I think. But yeah, I don't think there's anything else I need to go over. I think we're good to start, so I will do that. Okay, so we're 2.5 hours in, and yeah, only now have I finished the details. So yeah, at the beginning, whenever I said this was a complex design, I really didn't go into much detail on it, but yeah, there's a lot of little bits here because I mean that's just part of the nature of the design sense of Metal Gear Solid, which just contributes to some stuff like this taking a very long time. The colors might not, though. We'll see. I might split this up across a second day. It might be necessary just to speed things along, or not even speed things along, but just to make this a little bit more manageable for me in terms of actually recording it, just to split it across a second day. But yeah, this one is just, yeah, unsurprisingly quite time consuming. Actually, there is a little bit of this which I think I'm just going to run back in and just put a little bit of a fold here, just something like that, just to emphasize that. Just to say that, yeah, that's folding up there. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, hair is obviously going to take a lot of time. I actually don't mind drawing hair, but it's a time-consuming process, regardless, no matter what you do, because I tend to try and organize hair into shapes, into individual shapes, like a kind of triangular flowing sort of line, which comes out to a point, and then just do it again. That's generally is how I do it. So it just forms these little shapes, and some parts will have heavier edges than others. Say, for example, the little flicks of hair that fall out over the bandana, those have harder edges around them because they're supposed to stick out a little bit more. And then yeah, you see these bits which have kind of little shapes that flow down into the root, and that's just kind of how I tend to draw hair. But yeah, there was a thing which I intended on mentioning there, but I kind of forgot it. Oh yes, I forgot to mention at the start of the video that I am still taking suggestions, so if you're willing to give them, I'll certainly hear them. But yeah, that's just, if you want to leave a comment, that's a thing that you can do. I'm supposed to do that at the start of the video. I forgot it last time, but this time I remembered, only halfway through the video though. So yeah, so yeah, if you want to leave me a suggestion, I'm willing to do it, and I'm willing to repeat stuff I've done before, because I could probably do it better. But yeah, so if you've got suggestions, I'll hear them. But yeah, yeah. So what was I going to do? So I've got to do the colors now, and I don't actually have to do any patterns or anything like that. This is like mechanically, in terms of what I actually have to do here, this one isn't that complicated. It's just the details of doing the design is very hard. Last time I talked about how with a mid shot you're at an awkward position in terms of the level of detail to the amount of space that you have to cover. So for example, if you're doing a full body shot on the exact same frame, say I was dealing with the exact same canvas space, but I had a full body shot, meaning the head was here and the bottom of the feet were here, then I only actually have to detail this amount of the frame, very little of it, and whatever the pose is. And then say I'm doing just a close-up, I'm dealing with a frame roughly the same size but just tilted the other way around. A vertical frame where I'm filling basically the whole frame, but but because it's so close, all the details are a lot more spread out, so I actually don't have as much to do. But whenever you're doing a mid shot like this, and I mean the shot ends at the beginning of his waist, so this is the thing. It's like there is a lot of headroom here, more than I would normally do, but I lost the thought there for a second. But yeah, this is the thing. There's a lot more space here. There is still a lot of space which isn't covered. Like whenever the shot is more zoomed out and you're seeing maybe like down to the beginning of the legs, that's whenever you have a little bit more, I suppose, to work with. In terms of, because those are the ones like with I'm just trying to think of an example of one that I've done semi-recently. That would be something like, I don't know, even the Mysterio one was kind of like that, where you see like the beginning of the legs, but there's still like quite a lot of the frame still empty or The Black Canary one is another example of that, I suppose, of where there's a lot more of the figure on show, meaning there's actually less that I have to do. Because when there's more of the figure on show, especially with the frame like this, there's more of the frame being left empty. Because we're zooming out more to fit the rest of them in. So because this is a kind of medium level of zoom, that means most of the frame is still being filled, but there's still a lot which isn't. And so that's where we're at here, where most of the frame is being filled, but there's still a lot of it which isn't. And that means that the level of detail that we have to do on the character is still pretty high. It's not as high as if it was a close-up, but it's also not as little as it would be if it was a full body shot. Full body shot is the least level of detail you have to do on a character. Well, not necessarily. If you're doing like a background character, that's the least level of detail you have to do on a character. Or if you're doing a shot so zoomed out that they're really tiny in frame, that's the least level you have to do. But for the purposes of this show, the least level of detail that I'd be doing would be a character who would just be full body on frame. Like I did with the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 mural. That was the least level of detail which I'd have to do for those characters because they're full bodies in frame. But yes, so I've been doing a lot of rambling just there. But yeah, like I used a lot of straight lines on just the gun just to speed my life up. I just did the point-to-point thing which Photoshop lets you do. If you tap from one place to another while holding the shift key, you get a straight line. That's just one way of doing it. You can also just hold shift and then draw a straight line that way, but that requires on your rotation that requires on how rotated the canvas is. So I just prefer a lot of the time to do the point to point rather than having to rotate the canvas and then find the exact right place where I get the straight line I want. So yeah, I think I've said everything I need to. Yeah, it got very dark very early today, so I had to turn on the light much earlier. But yeah, I'm reckoning that I'll probably split this into a second recording. The video will still just be the one video though, so you don't have to worry about that, I suppose. But yeah, anyways, I'll carry on. Okay, so that's our colours. I threw in just a placeholder background there for a little while of just a bright red. No, not a bright red, but a red. Just so that it contrasts against the colours that we're working with here, which are largely blues. So, for the background, I'm just going to do a flat white, basically, and then just have like some streaks of blue going through it so that it has a bit more texture to it, I suppose. But I'm just going to keep it white, realistically, and then I'm just going to put some, again, as I say, some streaks of blue through the background. I'll do that during this section because this is going to be our painted shading that we're doing now. I'm probably going to give things a fairly bluey tone. I'm probably going to have white be our lighter shading color, just to have things remain within the kind of what we're doing is going to all be very cold colors, very cool, cold colors. So yeah, we're going to be using probably a light light blue to a white as our shading, as our light color, and a dark blue, maybe something slightly purpley for our dark. And that's what we're going to roll with. Now, I didn't bother doing any sort of... I would normally with a gun, with colouring a gun, I would normally put a few different shades in there, but I didn't bother this time. I just had to be the one solid colour, because whenever I go back through with the detailed shading, I'm just going to use that to get the kind of shades in there. But that'll be the section after this one. So, yeah. I'll do the painted shading, and then I'll be back to do the detailed shading, and then that'll basically be us done. So yeah, I'll do the background during this section as well, because it'll take like 5 minutes. Anyways. Okay, so I did. Oh god. Oh, I did the painted shading, and as I say, it's formative as it stands. This is very much an in-between step between complete and unfinished, or between not finished and finished. Being that it looks kind of weird. This is a thing that happens particularly whenever you're going for like a color palette that conflicts with some of the colors. For example, this color palette somewhat conflicts with the skin and hair tone, because those would be warmer tones, and the entire rest of the color scheme is cold. So whenever I put a colder color scheme on the hair and skin, that basically means that that kind of washes it out. And once the detailed shading and the light line and all that stuff goes onto it, it'll clean things up a little bit, but until then it's kind of so-so. But yeah, anyways, there's not much I need to do left. I just need to do the detailed shading and the light line, and then I'll be back to do the gradient maps. So I will jump right into this, because this has already been nearly 4.5 hours, and I want to finish this tonight. So yeah, anyways, I'll do this, and then that'll nearly be us. So anyways, I'll be back soon. Okay, that is us done. So, did the detailed shading, did the light line, that's us done. So, all in all, this one wasn't too bad. Got to do the gradient maps, so I'll do that now. And as I said before, we're going to be going for a fairly cold color palette. So our black is going to be replaced with a kind of a purpley blue, something like there. Out there, that should work. And this is largely going to be pretty light, so we're going to want to keep this largely kind of light and cold. So put it about there, maybe even slightly greener than that. Put that one there. And our mid-tone should be somewhere about here, but still pretty bright. We're going to want to keep this, yeah, somewhat light. Because that's sort of the idea we're going for. Right, so overlay, Jesus, okay. It's intense. Right, soft light it is then. So we're going to turn that down to 60%. And how does that do for us? It certainly it makes it colder. Right, so we're going to duplicate that. And we're going to make this one a luminosity layer, so that will maybe slightly bring some of our colors back a little bit. Duplicate this. Put that over. And this one's going to be color burn. So this will kind of inset our colors a little bit more. So that's what we've got with our gradient maps. So now I will grab my texture and we will lay that over everything and we'll see how it comes out with that. It should be pretty solid, I think, no pun intended. Here's our texture. Let's see how this looks. I think we're going to want to keep the texture moderately intense this time. I'm going to maybe keep it higher. And I think that might do something for us whenever it's reasonably intense. That looks pretty good there. Yeah, and that's at 100%. I think I'm going to put it at 40%. So that'd be pretty intense for what we normally do. We don't normally have the texture that intense these days. I don't anyways. I normally put it to 20%. So this is literally twice as much as I would normally put on it. So yeah, we've got a nice texture here anyways. And because I didn't use pure white, you can sort of see parts of it on that. How does that? It does help to disperse our smoke a little bit here in the background, our kind of blue smoke. So yeah. Yeah. That is Snake. That is Solid Snake. Done. And yeah, I obviously, as you can tell from the color palette, I was kind of definitely going for more of the Metal Gear Solid 2 thing, because of how blue I decided to make everything. Because this was the thing which I hadn't really decided on whenever I started, was what kind of color palette I was going to go for. I didn't know what I was going to do for the background either, so I just kind of settled on this. And I think it works, the kind of heavy blue. I think that works for us. I wasn't expecting this to be done in the one sitting, I have to say, and given that it took nearly 5 hours, it is surprising that I got it done in the one sitting, but I started a little earlier today than I did the last time. Last time I started a little bit more in the later afternoon. Today I started pretty early in the afternoon, so I was able to get most of it done. Well, I was able to get all of it done. Yeah. All things considered, this one wasn't too bad. I expected it to be a lot more difficult than it actually was. Again, most of the difficulty came from the details, which is to be expected. Details took 2.5 hours to do. And then everything else also took 2.5 hours to do. So, I mean, the details literally were like half of the process here today. But yeah, so, I mean, it could have been a lot worse. All things considered, this one wasn't too bad. And I enjoyed doing it well enough. There were a lot of little, like, kind of pock marks, little holes, which I noticed in my colouring, so I was a little lax, I suppose, when I was doing that, but I think I covered up most of it with the light line. You probably noticed me doing that. But if you didn't, well, you know now. But yeah, I was kind of trying to, that's why there's parts of the light line which are a little thicker than others, because I was trying to mask some of the little mistakes which I made earlier, and I didn't feel like going and fixing them the old-fashioned way by getting the color and then just going over it, because that's a lot more effort than I'm willing to put in here, I guess. It's more than I was willing to do right now, because it's in the evening now. I've been doing this again for quite a while, so you know. Anyways, I think given that is us done, I will do the outro, and I will leave you. So, again, if you've got suggestions, you can leave a comment. I'll listen, and I'm open to the idea of repeating something that I've done in the past, so long as it hasn't been like super recent. I mean, the last episode that I did was Mysterio. I wouldn't really want to do Mysterio immediately again. But in like 3 months, if you suggested a Mysterio, I'd be more open to it. That's the kind of idea. Of where, yeah, I'm willing to repeat stuff, just not constantly. I do like a bit of variety. So, and that's why I'm asking for suggestions. Because if you've got a suggestion, I'll listen. Again, no guarantees that I'll do it, but it's nice to have the options. It'd be nice to broaden my options a little bit, because obviously I have my own tastes, and my tastes are specific sometimes. So, this is the thing. I would prefer to maybe have some more options sometimes. So, if you got suggestions, I'll hear them. I'll have them. I'll take them. But yeah, with all that said, I will do the outro, and then I'll leave you. So, if you liked the video, do whatever you'd normally do, whether that be liking it or not. I would, of course, prefer if you liked it, but I can't make you do that, so, well, you can just do you. Same deal if you want to subscribe. I would, of course, prefer if you did, but I can't make you do that either. So, do it or don't. I don't need to tell you what the subscribe button is. You've seen a YouTube video before, presumably. So, again. And if you choose to watch the next video, I'll see you next time. But with all that said, I will say goodbye and I will leave you. I kind of lost the plot there for a second, but yeah. Anyways, bye-bye.